when, for example, if we were to what the West calls the welfare state, you mention it as welfare state, for our Indian audience, when we are feeling ungenerous, we call it freebies, right? But it's also effectively welfare, where we give free ration, we give free schooling in India, we give free hospitals. It's not of the quality that we want it to be, but we're paying for it. And there are many, many other things that we hand out in a way to even out the inequality, because not everybody can afford the same kind of schools, and so the government has to provide schooling, has to provide midday meals in order to keep people on an even playing field to battle it out as capitalists. Where in any government, whether we're talking about the US and you're talking about India, where is that line between this is something that is needed because we have to look after our people, and we are a capitalist nation and we have to give a free market? Like, are these two things in conflict with each other?
Not really. I think there's a natural progression that as you make more money, you have the resources to do it, you can afford to do greater welfare. Yes. Issue is that if you do too much of it too early, prematurely, that's when the problems arise. Or if you do it far greater than what is your ability to earn in terms of through taxes. So look at the examples here of this, right? Which is that as far as one thing that we forget is that which has been the most successful economic model or economic nation of the last 100 years in a way? It's been China.
Okay.
US before that, but last 30 to 40 years, let's say, it was China in terms of what China has done. Yes, it's been America's century virtually, but China last 30 to 40 years, what they achieved in terms of economic growth rates at that size, no one's done in the history of economic development, where they grew at 10% a year for 30 to 40 years on average, right? So that was incredible. China and India had virtually the same per capita income level till 1990 or so. And then since then, even though India has carried out economic reforms, its pace has been much slower, and we have spent much more on welfare. Now, in China's case,
and we spent the last 20 years looking over our shoulder, comparing our growth rate with China.
And we were always overshadowed. Only now are we sort of growing faster. But China's per capita income is already 4 times larger than what India's is. Its economic size is also nearly that much larger than ours is. So they've clearly, moved ahead a lot over the time period. One of the very key lessons from China, even though it was a communist state, was that it followed a form of ruthless capitalism in the 1990s and 2000s, where it told its people that, listen, we're going to spend whatever money we can on building the infrastructure, great bridges, ports, roads, and you have to figure out where you're going to go and work. And you should try and go and work as much towards the areas which are economically successful. So there's great migration which took place in China towards the eastern seaboard. And the 1990s, they fired nearly 100 million people in its public sector enterprises and told them, go and find your own job. And they've spent nothing on welfare in those days, nothing. So that was the ruthless capitalism that they followed. And look at the results that they got. Now, as far as there were other countries like Brazil or like in Latin America, which decided that we are going to first give our people lots of welfare, let them spend lots on welfare, and then later on we'll see what happens. So you created a welfare state prematurely, and then those countries have always had a terrible infrastructure. So in terms of, it depends how, that you have that much money, how do you prioritize where to spend it? In an ideal world, you'd like to do both. Yes. Spend a lot on infrastructure, also spend a lot on the needy, in terms of people who need them. But I'd say the fact is that in the case of China, we saw what results we got when you do too much of ruthless capitalism in a way. And we saw, like in the case of Brazil, what happens when you spend too much on welfare. So I think
it's a balance.
It's a balance you have to get correct, and you have to also understand what the polity is. In India's case, we cannot do what China did. Yes. We cannot fire 100 million people, in a public sector enterprises. But then that's why we'll never be able to grow like China of 9, 10, 11%, because the kind of reforms that China did and the kind of foreign investment they drew. When China was growing really rapidly, FDI, for example, as a share of their economy, was 4% of GDP. Even today, countries like Vietnam, which are seen as the next China, they're attracting that kind of foreign investment. Our foreign investment as a share of the economy is still, around 1% or so?